Slice the Podcast is brought to you by VegaLend, a different way to get a mortgage. VegaLend provides insight and advice so you can make informed decisions for the future of your family. Welcome to Slice, property made possible. We're a platform on a mission to reduce barriers to home ownership. This podcast is a safe space for our community to learn together and build the confidence required to start on their property journey. When you're ready to start, head along to slicetobuy.com and sign up for your free dashboard.
Team, we're up to pretty interesting one. It's kind of a slight pivot, but I mean, we've mentioned it once or twice. Property versus stock is where we're at. So, if you want to outline for us, Mossy, what you're going to cover off when considering, which one should we place our bets on, so to speak?
Yeah, this is an interesting topic, and I think the themes have come through so strong throughout the conversations because it's something I'm quite passionate about, and it's front of mind because they are, it's not an either or, it's an and. But I think it's super interesting to think about the pros and cons of each, investment type. So a couple of things that we've spoken about, but also we're going to go into a deeper dive on today are the ability to leverage and borrow from the bank with your investment, inflation and your ability to protect your investments over the long period.
Yep, nice. Just double checking on
our
upcoming points.
Reallocation of rent. And also the benefits of being able to live in that property, if that's, there's so many kind of non-tangible benefits that come from that. So I guess to unpack that first one.
Ability to leverage from the bank. Yeah, definitely dive into what that means.
Yeah, and I know you have been interested as we've talked into some of this detail around what that means. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, if you have sort of $50 a week that you can put into a portfolio of stocks or shares, that's awesome, and you can turn that into something that hopefully, in my mind, becomes a deposit, at which point it's kind of a level up in terms of investment, being able to invest in property because you get access to other people's funds. And I think that's the key takeaway probably. And the biggest takeaway, maybe we should have finished with it.
Yeah.
But is that once you start investing with other people's money and not just your own, you're playing at an entirely different level, and we're disrupting what it means, to be rich and poor. We're bridging that gap of inequality.
Yes. Because
you're giving people the opportunity to make big investments and big gains accordingly. Mm-hmm. Of course, also you can make big losses, so you have to be aware of that. As I'm saying that, I'm just that it's not fair to say that, and that's what it is, because there's always a risk involved in any type of investment. But if you can get, together with other people, or if you can get a deposit that's big enough to move into property, all of a sudden it's not just your funds you're investing with, it's your funds and the bank's funds, and mostly the bank's funds.
Yes.
And there's a risk appetite conversation around that, around feeling but they're going to hold me accountable or whatever. But the worst case for you is that you become bankrupt, and obviously that's a terrible case.
Yeah.
But
not ideal.
But they still kind of lose the majority of that money. So it is a positive thing.
Yes.
To be able to borrow $800,000 from someone and try and make money with it, because if you put $50 into Apple shares, you might get X percentage back for that, which might mean you can turn that into $100.
Right.
But if you put $50K in, and then we used this use case in a different episode where we both put in different amounts. So we both put in 100K instead of 50K, and then we have a 200K deposit together.
Yeah.
Then we get access to 800K for the remaining part of the loan and investment, and then all of a sudden we get the profit of, any uplift on $1 million.
Yes.
Not on even not on our original contribution of 100K each. and definitely not on $50 or $500.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking about property and we're thinking about equality, this is probably the money shot for me in terms of the biggest way that we can change our lives and change the wealth gap is through property. That's how the system's been set up. It is what it is.
Yeah.
So acknowledging that access to someone else's funds and the bank's funds, creates that opportunity for you.
For sure. Yeah, and I like that accessibility point. Moving on to the second point you mentioned, it's a bit more of a long-term mindset, but inflation, which is a very topical thing right now, and ability to outperform that over a 10-year period, for example.
Yeah,
How does that look?
Yeah, so I think we touched on this when we were talking about the benefits of going in with others. And again, it's the same in terms of the benefits of going into property versus stocks, is that property tends to outperform inflation over a longer period, like say 10 years.
Yeah.
And that means that, when you've got a high period of inflation like we do today, if that inflationary period was up at 10%, or the rate of inflation was at 10%, and you had 50K today, in 5 years that 50K would be worth 25K. So, yeah, I mean, that sucks.
Yeah.
Just on a basic level,
Just flat out,
that's
not great.
That's not good.
Yeah.
So being able to move today's money into a safe and sound investment where at the very least it maintains a level of wealth, over a 5-year period. So, and that's because cost of living increases with inflation. So
unfortunately.
your 50K today can get you 50K of, let's turn it into groceries. But in 5 years' time, the groceries have been becoming more and more expensive, so you get less bang for your buck. So the value of that 50K is now effectively worth 25K in 5 years.
Yeah.
And so if you can acknowledge that and then go, well, how can I protect that money? How can I protect that wealth over that period of inflation? Property is the
winner.
Renowned winner. And, the likes of Elon Musk and others. I do love space, so I will happily reference that. He's a controversial character, but I would love to go to space, Elon, please.
Yeah.
So I think, just thinking about how you can protect that wealth is key.
Yeah.
And if you only have, a certain amount of money in stocks and a certain amount of money even sitting in a bank balance, you run the risk of not being able to keep up with inflation. It depends on how good you are at investing in stocks, and I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying that property is a valid contender, but it's always about how easy it is to get in, and again, whether or not you can go in with someone or paying an order to protect that initial, chunk of wealth that you have.
Right.
And I'm not saying, it's fair to say that if you have $1,000 and that's all you have, then stocks is your best option.
For sure.
But if you've built that portfolio up and you're creeping up to the 20, 25 grand, I don't want to tell people what's right, because you can actually, there's lots of different scenarios, and we've talked about, a guarantee and different things in it. And it depends on your circumstances and who can help you in. But if you're building that portfolio into a certain amount, and it's something substantial, and for me, substantial is 20 grand. I know that sounds so low for property, but I'm
no, it's significant.
At that point, you should be thinking, what's available for me in the property market? What can I do to jump into that next step? So we're going to talk to some great guests throughout the podcast as well that will talk about their journey with stocks, and we're big fans of likes of Girls That Invest and others doing work in that space.
Yeah, shout out.
Little shout out to Sim and Sonia. But we'll talk about how that strategy and the property strategy work in tandem, and it's a wealth journey at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay, so we're still highlighting that stocks can be a really great option to get, a consistent revenue stream, for example, but what about the mentality around, when it comes to property, the reallocation of the rent that you're paying on a weekly basis to wherever you're living?
Yeah,
break that down.
So I think one of the challenges I have with investing in stock or investing in shares is you have to find that money from your disposable income. So anything you've got left over after you've paid, the cost to live. And it can be very different for property in that if you have rent that's going out and that's, $200 a week or whatever it is, you get to move that into your property investment. And so the challenge, and as I was embarking on Slice, had a lot of people say, but wouldn't it be better to be thinking about it as property investment and not living in there? But not for everyone. Personally, I wanted to own and occupy my home. Yeah. So again, it depends on your values, but being able to move your rent across means that, again, in the same way that borrowing from the bank increases your purchasing power and your investment power, so too does moving your rent into a property, because that rent over a 10-year period, if it's 10 grand each, I think we've used that reference before, but that's 100K over 10 years that you could be moving into an investment. So it's a different dynamic when you start looking at property as opposed to stocks, because what you have to invest in stocks is just based on anything left over. What you have to invest in property is anything left over and your rent.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I really like you mentioned, and it keeps coming up through all the episodes, I feel like, getting really familiar with your values and with respect to when you're buying property, what matters most to you. It's setting the foundation for everything. So I don't know, just wanted to bring that up again. I love that you keep mentioning that.
It does seem like a really strong theme that's coming through.
Yeah.
And I think it's because property isn't just a transaction, but it isn't just emotional. And like anything else in our lives, it should be based on your circumstances and your values. We probably should have done a podcast first on getting to know oneself.
Yeah.
Before we even
how's
got
your psychology
into
today?
Yeah.
We don't have a degree in that, unfortunately.
But it's key to understand everything that you do should be based on, your values.
Yeah.
So the way that you're investing, whether it's in stocks or properties, the way that you relate to your friends.
Yeah.
Who you, decide to do a podcast with.
100%.
It should all be based on your values. So I think it's
I'm still questioning it.
I'm not sure we could have missed that theme. No. Oh gosh, I missed that. I wish I had.
Totally went over her head. All right, no. Well, let's go to the final point then, just tying nicely to that whole values piece. What's the benefits of living in your own home, I guess, mindset?
Yeah, I think
Tease
that's
that.
just the final point to think about property versus stock, is there are these kind of ancillary benefits.
Yeah.
Not even ancillary, they're kind of primary for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And why they buy properties, to live in the home, to have, in our very first episode, I remember talking about a home being financial security and financial independence for me, but also being emotional stability and sort of impacting my well-being. And I think that's where property and stocks, quite obviously everyone knows there's a difference at that level.
For sure.
So the benefits of property investing before this point, I guess, have been focused on the transactional side and your ability to actually grow larger wealth with property investment. But this one does come back to that kind of feel good around, I get to live in this home, I get to experience that space.
Yeah.
What does that mean? If you're working from home, or if you're working on a business as I am, and I wanted to kind of be in a space where I was comfortable doing that, it can also impact your life and act as a springboard to, allow you the space to build wealth in other areas, because you've created this this
your own
foundation in this space.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, so gosh, we've covered off quite a lot in terms of, why you should probably potentially double down on property as opposed to
I try to be
really
political, and I think it's because I'm a Libra. It wasn't very political.
Oh, we're talking star signs already. Oh gosh.
I know, different podcast altogether.
Red flag?
But I love how it's like everyone's like, now we hate the podcast because we're not into star signs. I don't know. Is it polarizing? I take a very balanced view of the world. But I love how you try to challenge me and just say so we're thinking this.
Yeah.
But
Sense check.
again, maybe that's why the values theme is coming through so strongly, because I'm kind of trying to find a way to say it's not every option is appropriate for everybody, but what we're talking about will hopefully educate you to make the best decisions for you and your circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for joining our community. Buying property isn't easy, but listening in will get you one step closer on your journey. Please leave an Apple or Spotify review and provide feedback so we can improve your experience. Join our Facebook group, A Safe Space to Learn Together, or follow us on Instagram at Slice2Buy. If you have any questions or topics you would like us to touch on, you can email us at hello@slice2buy.com. A quick reminder, Slice the podcast does not provide personalised investment advice. We are not acting as financial advisors or taking into account your circumstances. To get personalised advice, join us at slice2buy.com and engage with our partners who can act as your financial advisor or lawyer and support you with your specific needs.